Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're opening this meeting of the Interagency Coordinating Council on Youth Services for our 2019 public annual hearing. On behalf of Commissioner Chung, welcome to our public hearing. I'm very pleased that we have all of our ICC members represented in front of you, and this is a great opportunity for young people and families to address their concerns directly to city agencies that have an impact on their lives. So I guess we'll start here.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Pauling. I'm the Senior Advisor with the New York City Department of Social Services, as well as representing the Human Resource Administration and the Department of Homeless Services.
Firefighter Tim Boyle from the New York City Fire Department, Office of Community Affairs.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Lauren Antoine from the New York City Housing Authority. I'm the Borough Administrator for our Brooklyn Family Partnerships Department. We are the Social Services branch of the Housing Authority.
Police Officer Aaron Ayala. I'm representing the Community Affairs Bureau as well as the LGBTQ Outreach Unit.
Good afternoon, my name is Jordan Manguel and I'm from the New York Public Library. I'm representing the Young Adult Programming Department.
Hello everyone, I'm Melissa Melenik. I'm the Coordinator of Teen Services for Queens Public Library.
I'm Gabriel Santos, Community Educator from the Mayor's Office to End Domestic and Gender-Based Violence.
Good afternoon, I'm Mayor Howard, Program Manager, Adolescent Health Program with New York City Health and Hospitals.
Good afternoon, Magali Arce with the New York City Department of Probation, Executive Assistant.
Good afternoon, my name is Erin Baker. I'm the Director of Citywide Youth Programs for the Parks Department.
Hi, my name is Victoria Grimshaw. I'm the Director of Policy for the Division of Family and Child Health at the New York City Department of Health and Mental Education.
Hi, my name is Serge Saint-Leger. I'm the Senior Program Manager from the Department of Education in the Office of Safety and Youth Development.
Good afternoon, my name is Anthony Myers. I'm a Program Officer with the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs.
Good afternoon, my name is Stacy King. I'm the Executive Director for the Education and Youth Advocacy Services with the Department of Correction.
Good afternoon, I'm Geronimo Robert with the Grandparent Resource Center at the New York City Department for the Aging.
I'm Nora Daniel with the Administration for Children's Services, Deputy Director for Intergovernmental Affairs.
Well, welcome and thank you everyone for coming. 2019 has really been a banner year for the ICC. We began the year actually testifying before the City Council, talking about the important work that we had. The Council of Youth Services Committee really wanted to be engaged in what we're doing and was grateful. So we thank Chairperson Rose and their committee staff for their outstanding support. We also celebrated the 30th anniversary of the ICC, where we took a look at the past 30 years about the work that we've done and about where we could go forward. We also looked at the issues facing foster care youth. We published the 3rd edition of the Guide for Young People. If you haven't gotten a copy, they're available outside. We focused again, continuing our efforts on making it a more inclusive city for LGBT young people. We worked with the center on providing LGBT training to young people. And we actually recognized Runaway and Homeless Prevention Month on October 19th here at DYCD and focused on the needs of runaway and homeless young people. There was a lot of work that went through this. So I first want to thank our chairs. Randy Scott, who worked tirelessly, Tracy Thorne, who is here. Thank you, Tracy. Luis Osorio, who was our former chair. Is Luis here?
He is, he just stepped out.
Okay, well thank you, Luis. Thank you to all the members of the Supporting LGBT Youth Work Group, the Corner Involved Work Group. Paula Calvin, is Paula here?
Yeah, she's outside right now.
Well, thank Paula for us. Celinda Wu, she's fabulous. And we have tremendous interns that have been helping us. Jinda Atong. We have Tiffany Schiller and Shannon Festinel. So thank you for all your work. They really helped put this event together. So a little bit of housekeeping. If anyone needs to use the restrooms, they're directly behind us and the passwords are available. And we're gonna call up groups, young people one by one. We won't really have a time limit because I think we have plenty of time. Right now we have 2 folks signed up to speak. If you have not signed up and you want to speak, please please go outside and please give your name. In the meantime, we also want to make clear that actually, because of the weather and all, we're expecting a whole bunch of other young people to come in a little while. So we may have a slight delay. So first, I'd like to call up as our first testifier, Ramon Leclerc from the New Alternatives for Homeless LGBT Youth. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. First I want to say thank you to DYCD for the efforts put forward, but I gotta say there's a lot more work that needs to be done for the especially for youth between the ages of 21 and 24. We know this economy, the way this economy is set up, it is hard for anyone who is just turning 21, even someone that's 24, to be expected to move out of their parents and be able to sustain for themselves, especially our youth who's aging out of foster care and our youth who don't have family to provide for them, especially the LGBTQ community, with their parents being so unreceptive of the life that they choose. I have heard numerous horror stories of young people who don't have anywhere to go because of their sexual identity. Sorry. So, you know, I really wish that we could provide more services, especially affordable, sustainable housing for our youth, especially those between 21 and 24. Especially because the shelter system, and yes, DHS has made great strides by implementing Marsha's place and stuff, but there is still very controversial and sometimes unsafe, because I have heard stories from clients who I serve. So, like I said, there's been great work done, but there's also a lot to go back and really focus on. Aging out of foster care myself and becoming homeless from aging out of foster care, so I can speak firsthand on how 21 to 24 is a really, really rough point. You know, to hear, oh, we're not gonna help you if you can't get a job, and in 2008 was when I was aging out of foster care, in the middle of the session. So I was like, what am I supposed to do? I'm trying, but thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ramon, for sharing your story. We know we have much more work to do to help that age. I can tell you from DYCD's perspective, we've done a lot of work in that regard. Obviously, the Summer Youth Employment Program is a very important tool and resource for young people, but also the work that our RHY staff have been doing in that regard, such as we have a 24/7 drop-in center in all 5 boroughs. We actually have 8 drop-in centers across the 5 boroughs. One operated by Ali Forney in northern Manhattan, which is really designed to help LGBT young people. And we're actually working on now adding additional beds for young people between the ages of 21 and 24.
I was at the hearing, so.
Thank you. I don't know if any other members will. Thank you again, Ramon. Next, Sean Slevin from the Swim Strong Foundation.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
And good afternoon, esteemed panel. It's great to be here to speak in front of you, and there's 1 or 2 familiar faces, so happy to see some old friends. Swim Strong is a not-for-profit here in New York City. We're 13 years young. We are predominantly a volunteer-based organization, for those of you that don't know us. And our mission is to help people be safe in and around the water. We do that by providing affordable traditional learn to swim classes from age 3 through seniors. and from Learn to Swim, adaptive programming for those with different abilities, as well as through competitive training. So we really run the whole spectrum. For our friends in the Parks Department, we have graduated well over 200 lifeguards who primarily are working for Parks Department. So it's really very full spectrum services. But what I'm actually here to talk to you about is something that may not be as well known about us, and that's our dry side training. So I'd like to set the table by asking you if you might be aware that a person is actually dying due to drowning every minute. One person per minute on a global basis. For every person that dies, 5 more people are suffering brain and spinal cord injuries, life-altering. Here in the United States, we're a developed country, and yet our rates are not much better. We average 10 people per day dying due to drowning, with commensurate 50 more people with these terrible injuries. What is more staggering is that 95% of those incidents actually never had to happen. So with proper education, skill-based training, common sense, and good judgment, these issues could be avoided. And that's why I want to speak to you about the criticality of water safety training from a dry side perspective. So let me bring you from the globe to here in New York City. As you know, we just passed the 7th anniversary of Superstorm Sandy. And while there's been much work that has been done, clearly there is much work that remains to be done. If the city did nothing in a 30-year period, every day at high tide, we would be experiencing a Sandy-like effect. Every day at high tide. Fortunately, the city is doing some things to mitigate that, which is fabulous. Our storms are becoming more super, not less. And as it specifically relates to us here in New York City, our waterfronts are being developed as never before in our lifetimes, thus opening up open water spaces to our public, which is phenomenal for that one person who really understands that environment and has the skills to successfully navigate it. But for every one of those people, there are hundreds of thousands of people that do not have those skills. So I know that our deaths due to drowning and our water-based accident rates are going to skyrocket. What do we do? It's really about layers of protection. For example, we could have better signage, and Parks Department has done a great job, particularly in the Rockaways, putting up some more signage, which is fabulous. But really along any point of access to water, and particularly our waterfronts that are being developed now, we need that. It's even about maybe using technology better. When we know there are rip currents, for example, which we're beleaguered with all the time, to be able to push that message through on our cell phones so people know about it, that would be really great, because I challenge any of you sitting here to put your hand up if you actually know, to look at the ocean, what a rip current would look like. Maybe there would be 1 or 2 of you that would, probably the rest would not. And that would be indicative of us as a population. But what Swim Strong can provide is 2 areas of protection. The traditional swim classes, which I referenced before, and dry side programming called Know Before You Go. And Know Before You Go really addresses the environmental aspects and dangers of water, from inside our very own homes to everywhere we meet it in the outer doors. And our goal is by having people understand the nature of water, that they can make the right decisions that will keep them safe in and around it. Because again, if many of us don't know what that rip current looks like, think of those 3 boys that went to the beach in the Rockaways the end of October, who just decided they wanted to paddle, go in, and none of them knew how to swim, they just wanted to get their feet wet. You know what happened to them. They got knocked on their butts and they got dragged out in the current. And you also know that one of those boys was lucky. It took 4 surfers to bring that boy into shore. And 6 days later, they found one child, and 7 days, 7th day, the other child. So when people don't understand what they're looking at, it's hard to know whether they're going to be making the right decision to access the water or not. On a practical basis, we certainly understand that not everybody is going to learn how to swim. We have a $9.5 million person lift here in New York City. Even if we had the political will and the financial ability, we don't have the pool space. We don't have the instructors. But everyone can understand the nature of water. We can teach this very simply. As I said, Know Before You Go addresses water from inside our own homes. You may not be aware of this, but drowning is actually a leading cause of death for children under the age of 5, with most of those kids dying in their own homes. Not outside swimming pools in their yards, in their homes. Now you might say, oh, bathtubs, right? Yes. How about toilet bowls? Whoever knew it would be so much fun to throw your toy in the toilet bowl and then go diving in to retrieve it? Who knew? Toddlers are called that because they toddle, right? The heaviest part of their body is their head. If their head gets upended and no one is there to see them, 2 minutes, 2 inches. That's all it takes for a drowning. And that's true for even adults, 2 and 2. So if we can help, and even I think there's a hospital, health and hospitals group here too, if we can even get information out into our public health care facilities to raise the awareness, the statistics of drowning, how our parents can look at their homes differently, to think about, in a sense, waterproofing, although that's a fallacy, but to put those lenses on, to think where is there potential danger in my home as it relates to water. That will solve many issues. Drowning is also a leading cause of death for children on the spectrum, right? When we go outside, of course, we need water in many, many different ways, from ponds, rivers, lakes, streams, of course, our beautiful ocean. Each one of those environments is very different, and they're learnable. We can understand how to deal with those environments, to engage them or not to engage them. People will often say to me, well, Sean, we know you come out to the schools and you do this teaching, that's great, but it's really a summer thing. And I'm here to tell you, no, it's not. We just came out of the fall. Fall is hurricane season. You know what that does to our oceans, hence we had the tragedies in the Rockaways and in the Hudson, by the way, just 6 weeks ago. We're coming into winter now. How many people fall through the ice every year here in New York City? And a few of them don't survive it. In the spring, we have flooding. Who knows? Should I be crossing water? Are there downed power lines that I, should be looking for? If I'm in a situation where I'm on a road, which part of the road do I try to cross through? Which part might be higher, which part might be lower? Who knows those things? These are all teachable things, all teachable things. So I'm here to beseech all of you to think about programming. Happy to share hours, would love to be partnering with many of you to get hours further out there. We've taught about 5,000 people now, Know Before You Go, and would love to do more. And I'm happy to take any questions if you have them. I would just finish by saying to you that we are blessed with multiple types of waterfronts in our city. Blessed. And everybody wants to go to them in one form or another. But nobody goes to the water and expects a bad outcome. Let's help our families be safe here in New York City. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Shauna. Year after year, we hear of too many of these tragedies, particularly in the Rockaways. My question for you is, so your outreach is generally through schools, would it be through community centers, senior centers, the Parks Department, because obviously we have representatives all sitting on this panel, and how can we help spread the word about your services?
So shawn.swimstrongfoundation.org, 646-269-7897. Really, we're available, we're out there. We're a very small organization. I have tried to bring our programming to the Board of Ed more centrally, and I must say that it's been a disappointing outcome. So perhaps 2020 will bring us a change of page and a change of opportunity in that we're getting surged. That would be great to reconnect with you on that. So thanks.
Great. I don't know if anyone. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Giovanna from the Grant Resource Center at the Department of Aging. Thank you so much for your talk. I was going to say, on a personal basis, while I don't know how to swim, I make sure both my boys know how to swim. So they're out there. One is a fish at 7 years old. The other one is in a learn to swim class, started from the time he was 3 years old. So that was my thing. There was a lot of the things you mentioned that I was unaware of. And I would love to have you and somebody in your program speak to our grandparents or relatives who are raising young children. And we talk about securing the outlets, we talk about making sure, all the other stuff for when you have toddlers, to make your home safe. This is something that has never been brought up. I would love to do that. And at the same time, I could connect you to different senior centers around the 5 boroughs as well. So
I would very much welcome that. And also, the senior population should be in the water because it is the most, first of all, it's the only exercise that truly works the entire body. And it is the only one that we do literally from womb to tomb. And I'm closer to the tomb side of the equation myself. And as we get older, it's the only one that's skeletal friendly, right? So really, for our seniors, if we don't move, we die, okay? So moving in water is the best possible. So I'd love to pass that message along as well. Please, thank you.
Anyone else? Well, thank you, Sean. I'm certainly going to take your contact information, and we'll be in contact about how the agency could promote water safety. Thank you for coming. Next, I'd like to call up Jeremy Belfon Williams from Medgar Evers College to discuss homelessness.
And we have a program at Medgar Evers. Come see us.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeremy Williams. I am from the Flatland Beacon program, and I am in the youth council program, and I'm the president. I would like to speak on the topic of homelessness, and I've looked online to see about the Title I funding, and from my research, hold on, let me explain what the Title I funding is a federal entitlement program that gives funds to schools in need of based on low-income students. So Title I, it gives schools money for those kids who are homeless, who are on the verge of homelessness, who probably need the help from other people just to get just a push, just to say that we have some hope for you in some type of way. Also, based on my researches, they say that schools only are given $500 to $600 a year for every child that they have that's on low income, and I don't think that's enough for the kids, because I don't see that any type of programs are being made for those kids to stay on the street or to be in some way inflicted and not be in the streets, to come to school, stay in school, try to make something of themselves, so they don't look like, oh, just because I'm homeless, I don't have anything to do. It's like, I need just to push them, give them some type of hope, just to say, okay, we have this program for you, let's see how this will work out for you, let's see if you would like it. Let's push this somewhere and see if we get you somewhere instead of just wasting your time doing something else. Also, I think that some type of donation should be started, some donations should start being made to these schools to kind of increase the funding that they're already getting. And that's it. That's my speech. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. Does anyone on the panel have questions or comments? Thank you, and thank you for your beacon program. Fantastic here. I think this is the third year. So thank everyone for coming. I appreciate that. Next, CP Ben Hain from City Arts.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me, and as long as you don't call me tipsy, I'm okay. But usually it's CP Ben Hain. 30 years ago, when I started City Arts, it was because I wanted to see and hear the voices of our youth on the walls of the city, in their houses, in their schools, on the streets, and taking them off the streets, giving them an opportunity where they will be able to work with professional artists that are listening to them, that are asking them what to do instead of telling them what to do. This is how we start, by listening to our youth, by asking them the questions, including seniors. We work with seniors and youth. We bring them together. We call the project Past Forward, where we just now we completed a project at Sukasa, Jasa Beautiful Center, with seniors, where youth is sitting right in front of them, listening to their life stories and painting a portrait of their life stories. And you have to see the smiles on their faces after they see their works displayed everywhere, and everyone came to see, even their children, what they created together. So we can bridge the two generations, the three generations sometimes. We just need your help to be able to create these opportunities for our youth, for our seniors, and for the families where we are. We just completed a 3-year project at the Alexander Hamilton Playground. 3 amazing walls that now are beautifying this playground, and because of us, Parks decided to do something with this playground in terms of the instruments and everything that is there, to install some new parts of the playground that are sort of needed a little refurbishing and so on. So we are kicking off economic development, social development, and beautifying the places, not just outside, but also within. One of the problems that we have is the outreach. We are reaching out to everyone, to politicians, to you guys in different organizations or companies, and we hardly hear back. We're sending questionnaires to politicians saying, please send us the addresses, the places that cry for attention, youth or families or roles that you feel that by us coming in and bringing the community together to work on these walls, on these graffiti, dirty walls, they will create their masterpieces that will make them proud, will clean up the area, and as some of my youth are saying, instead of using or selling drugs, we are working on these walls. I mean, they said it straight on New York 1. So we are capable of getting them off the streets, because I strongly believe when kids create, they do not destroy. But we need you to help us with outreach, with letting us know where are these walls, because where the walls need and cry for attention, for sure the community is there, and youth and kids that need our help, need a goal, they need our GPS. We'll set with them their GPS for life. And the minute they create in their community, they become responsible individuals. They become individuals that not only themselves are proud of themselves, but their families are proud of them. And we'll have to see how the shop owner or anyone else on the street looks at them and says, Mario, I saw what you did, it's amazing. And some kids are not good at math, but when you give them a brush, they are amazing. So let's give them more opportunities. If we will not give them the opportunities, someone else will. But it will not go to the positive side. We need to make sure that these kids are given the opportunities we can work with and they will be proud of. So, if anyone wants City Arts card, I'm going to leave it with you, and please do not hesitate. I'm 24/7 on my phone and on my email. This is what not-for-profit life is, you know that. But I love what I'm doing. It's not a job, it's a life mission. So don't hesitate to give me a call or to ask any questions.
Anyone, well, we've seen, we know a lot of our community centers actually have a mural, and we see the ownership that young people take when they paint over graffiti, clean their communities up, and the power of artwork. So we thank you for that. I do get your emails, and I do read them, but we'd be delighted to again partner with you about spreading the word about your services. Are there particular areas of the city you're interested in?
We're in all 5 boroughs, and in fact, we're now connecting youth around the world with New York. So we have a Polish principal coming next week to visit us in Harlem, and they will become sister schools with Hamilton Grange School, for instance. Because we create peace walls, mosaic peace walls around the world. We have 5 of them already in Berlin, in Karachi, Pakistan, in Israel, in London, and hopefully we're going to have, and of course here on 137th Street. Please go and visit and you will see what it means, okay? It's truly amazing, okay?
Well, I could look at our ICC members and I could see many opportunities, such as NYCHA may be an opportunity to have a canvas. I've seen that actually
and
work.
we were with you, we created about 20 murals with previously homeless kids right in NYCHA area, or with a few other organizations that you are partnering with.
And I would say the Parks Department is here, and
Yeah.
the Department of Corrections.
Yeah, in the parks we have over 45 artworks. City Arts is, now has over 330 murals all around the 5 boroughs in my 30 years.
I'm CPM Anthony Myers. I've worked with the organization for now 4 years, 5 years,
Wonderful.
through cultural affairs and
Thank
through our
you.
grants program.
So wonderful to see you.
I know. I just had to say hello really quickly, because we've never met.
Thank you, thank you.
And please, stay connected to our independent initiatives. We had a city canvas project where we invited organizations to submit proposals for artwork in temporary sort of scaffolding and all that. So
Wonderful.
Let's stay in touch.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You'll hear from me all the time.
I know.
Thank you, and happy holidays to you all. Thank you for what you are doing. Thanks.
Thank you, CP, again. Next, we have our good friend, Rafi Rios, from the New York City Anti-Violence Project. I think this is your 5th year in attendance at a public hearing. Thank you.
Hello. If you can't tell,
everyone. First and foremost, thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity to share this space and to have folks here who are stakeholders in our community as we're striving on finding ways to be able to not only connect our agencies and the work we're doing, but uplifting the narratives and experiences of many folks who are New Yorkers or coming to New York or new to New York who hold on to intersecting marginalized identities. There's a lot of emotional labor that comes into this, and a lot of these conversations move us into positions where we have to learn to sit with discomfort, and that's a tool that we're often not provided in our education system. So I just want to, put that in the space and thank everybody for being here. I also want to thank the folks who've spoken here so far, because it takes a lot not only to generate the resilience needed to speak publicly, but also to do it in front of a panel of people who hold specific positions of power and privilege. So thank you. That being said, I have worked with the New York City Anti-Violence Project for 4 years. Before that, I've been a part of the, let's say, nonprofit sectors in New York City for over a decade. I didn't say earlier, but the pronouns I use are they, them, theirs. Again, I work with the New York City Anti-Violence Project as a client advocacy specialist. My focus, my entire work life has been uplifting the narratives and experiences of LGBTQIA+ youth. That being said, I'm going to be focusing on that today as I'm a part of ICC's work group in working with LGBTQ youth. A question that I would like to ask the panel to hold on to as we're holding this space is, how are you in a position of power collectively incentivized to uplift the narratives and experiences of LGBTQIA+ youth? The reason why it's important to keep that in mind is because of the fact that the difference between many of our youth and those who are in this space today is that we have the privilege of walking out the door whenever we want. And that's what it is at the end of the day. A lot of youth don't have that privilege. So I want us to hold that. The first thing I would like to bring into the space is barriers in accessing shelters. While I love hearing in the ICC meetings and through the UICD that we are expanding access to shelters for youth, I think it's important to acknowledge that across the age spectrum, we are still receiving reports of folks who are experiencing challenges in accessing shelters, not only through the current DHS intake system, but also through the domestic violence hotline, in access to language, access needs once they're connected to shelters, and the fact that there's a difference between the laws that are in place to protect folks from being discriminated against compared to the actual policing that's happening within the shelters. The fact that we are in need in New York City of expanding in youth shelters speaks volumes in a city that has laws that protect folks from being discriminated against based off their age. The fact that we have to have shelters like Ali Forney, True Colors, Marshall's Place speaks volumes in a city that has laws that protect people from being discriminated against in accessing shelters. New York City Anti-Violence Project runs a 24-hour hotline for folks who are survivors of violence. I am one of the people who manage that hotline, and I'm bilingual, so I have to hear it in Spanish too. So I have to hear it from all sides of the spectrum when folks call me and say, I called the hotline, or I went to the 30th Street Men's Shelter, keynote there. I went to the shelter, right, and they denied me access because they said that my ID doesn't reflect the way that I identify. There are laws that protect them against that. It makes my job more difficult when I have to remind people of the laws that exist, right? It makes the community agencies that I work with, it makes their jobs more difficult. Shout out to the Hate Crimes Task Force and to the Community Affairs Bureau, right? It must be challenging having to make a large part of the work you do, reminding people how to do their job, how to police the laws that exist, right? So what are we doing to make sure that we're addressing the elephant in the room? The fact that the folks who are stakeholders, who are gatekeepers in the community, like the DHS intake shelters, are acknowledging that these laws exist and they have to be enforced. Also acknowledging that shelters have systematically, historically, been created for folks who are either cisgender, white, right? Mostly cis white women, or cis white women who are survivors of domestic violence, right? How are we going to deconstruct these shelters to make sure that they're accessible to people of color, to queer people of color, to trans Black women, to folks living with disabilities, because barrier-free living shouldn't be the only option, because California Center shouldn't be the only option. Let's talk about the fact that in all of New York State, I think that there are only 2 shelters that accept pets. And there are a lot of prerequisites to what does that mean for folks. I can go on and on. I don't want to give information overload. I just think it's important for us to call that and address it. I'm going to move on to the next point. Challenges with fare evasion, challenges with MTA's fare evasion policing. I'm going to drink water real quick, sorry. So we all read the news, we all live in the city, we know what's going on with the MTA, right? We hear that there's a large deficit in the budget because of how many people are evading the fares. As someone who's a participant in social media, I often hear that it's ridiculous that people can't afford a bus swipe, but they got, $200 Jordans on while they're hopping on the back of the bus, right? And we're seeing viral videos of police harassing churro ladies because of the fact that they're not supposed to be conducting these types of business in the subways and how it's impacting our commute and this and that and the third. All right, cool. I'm not here to discuss that. That's not my place. It's not my proximity. I'm here to address the fact that because of these policies, they are disproportionately affecting Black and brown young people. And the fact of the matter is we're not doing enough collectively as agencies to acknowledge the institutional reasons why is it that our youth are unable to be able to access fair, like the economic empowerment needed to be able to swipe when they need to get from one place to the next. I lost count how many times I've had youth talk to me after, let's say, a support group that I facilitate, and they ask me for more than one Metro card. Because they say, listen, it's great that you give me a Metro card to go to and from this after-school program, but my school doesn't give me enough swipes to be able to also pick up my sibling who goes to a different school or goes to a different after-school program. Or I attend this other community program that doesn't have the access that your organization does in, getting the free Metro cards for youth and stuff like that, right? So what happens when a youth is in a position where they have no choice but to evade the fare in order to get from one place to the next, right? And instead of acknowledging that the way that we can uplift these youth by supporting them and getting to where they need to go, we're instead criminalizing them, right? And putting them in a position where they have to navigate the NYPD and they have to navigate the MTA, these institutions that would rather give them fines for money that they clearly don't have, right? I don't want to be the gatekeeper in that conversation because I believe that there are extraordinary groups already organizing across the city, having these conversations. However, it's important to acknowledge that this intersects with each and every agency here, and it intersects with the way that we're doing this work, right? It's important to acknowledge that at the end of the day, the public transit system in New York City is a civil service. It is a public service. And the fact that the MTA is not even at this panel speaks volumes. And I don't care about the semantics. I don't care about the respectability politics of it. At the end of the day, they hold a lot of power in this community for them not to be at this table, but then expect all of y'all to do the work for them when they make a mess. Thank you. Next point. I don't want to take up too much space, but I'm almost done. Lack of access to inclusive, affordable care. Let's talk about language and cultural humility. Shout out to organizations like the Mayor's Office to End Domestic and Gender-Based Violence and the Commission on Human Rights. I love the fact that in the past 2-3 years, and the DYCD, right? I love the fact that so many state agencies have evolved the language on how we're working with LGBTQ youth, right? Now there are more and more people in systems that can create change where we know what the T in LGBTQ means, right? We know how to work with the communities a little bit better than what it was 3-4 years ago. Excellent. There's more work to do. There's no certificate of authenticity in your allyship. There's no graduation here. There's, all right, what next, right? Because at the end of the day, the city is still behind when it comes to the language that the community is using and acknowledging that we are holding on to intersecting marginalized identities that are facing barriers in accessing your agencies. For example, the fact that there aren't enough conversations around affordable care, when we're talking about folks living with mental health who are also LGBTQ, right? Let's talk about the fact that there are limited providers that are queer competent, right? Many give misinformation about things like hormone therapy, right? So as someone who does this work, I have a resource guide for folks who are accessing trans-informed, trans-inclusive healthcare in New York City. And honestly, it's frustrating to have to tell clients time and time and again, you can go to these spaces, but there's most likely a waiting list. Or you don't have the insurance required to be able to afford these things, right? I get that there's a lot of complication and semantics to that. However, it's unfortunate that we're not having enough conversations collectively in order to create change, while acknowledging that many of your organizations and agencies are already doing that work internally. So I want to know, how is it that we're going to be able to bring that conversation to ICC so that we can do it more collectively, right? So for example, if we have, I've worked with folks in the NYPD who have done trainings on harm reduction in working with folks who use substances, right? Acknowledging that the answer isn't always criminalizing drug users, but connecting them to the Addiction Institute or the Center, Substance Use Harm Reduction Coalition, et cetera, right? Okay, cool. How are we going to keep that same energy across the board with different agencies to make sure that we're skill sharing how we're better providing LGBTQ folks access to your agencies and the care that's needed? Also, how are we going to take this conversation to funding committees so that when the city council and other folks are talking about how are we going to use this money, we're making sure that they're keeping LGBTQ folks in mind. There are limited times to use these services, such as after school hours, and it's harder if they are employed or working to support families. The reason why I say that is because of the fact that many of us work for nonprofit organizations that work at a specific time slot, right? I am non-binary, right? I still have to go to the doctor. While I have family sick and safe laws that protect me, I have insurance that semi-covers my needs, doesn't change the fact that I still have to dip into that pool in order to take care of myself. And I have to do it in a space where I don't have as much access to the services that are available in New York City compared to folks who may identify as cisgender, white, middle class, etc., right? At the end of the day, I'm limited to the places that I can go to where I don't have to explain to the doctor, this is how I have a relationship with my body and this is what my needs are. I'm forced to go to places, not forced in a bad way, but I have no choice. If I want support that best fits my needs, I go to Callan Lloyd, I go to GMHC, I go to Aperture. It sucks that I can't go to Bronx Lebanon or Lincoln or St. Barnabas or hospitals in my neighborhood. Not saying that they don't have the work already in place, but saying that they don't let me know that it's there. You know, the conversation is not being had. I don't feel safe going to these places because it seems like there's no vocal, consistency in letting us know that the services and programs there are intentionally inclusive so that I can feel safe enough to access them. Especially if you're someone who's LGBTQ in high school, you may not live in a safe space at home or in your foster care or anything to be able to access these services, right? Think about how limited and the barriers that come up when you have those conversations. Finally, my last point is kind of a weird flex, but something that I love to hear a lot from your agencies is how you are utilizing gaming as a part of your way to connect with youth throughout the city. I hear so many things from FDNY, NYPD, NYCHA about how you're expanding on programs and services that not only connect with the community, but also with the youth, right? Whether it's having more events and programs in community centers or building more, spaces so that youth have places to go after school or in the summers. I think it's important for us to be able to expand on that and acknowledge that the language that youth are using today are social media, right? And gaming spaces, right? It's technology. So I think that a conversation that we should be having across agencies and at ICC is how are we uplifting and expanding the narratives and experiences of LGBTQI plus youth within gaming spaces. Because a lot of the conversations that we're having that impacts our communities, they're already being had in these niche communities, and they can be the communities that we're uplifting in order to better meet their needs. For example, you wanna talk about toxic masculinity? Oh, let's talk about Gamergate, let's talk about the gaming community and how they're addressing it. You wanna talk about gender dysphoria and mental health issues? Let's talk about how many indie game developers are creating tabletop games and video games to be able to give folks a safe space to explore identity in a way where they can kind of like compartmentalize it, and it's almost a form of therapy at that point before they bring it back to their reality. Let's talk about the fact that gaming, especially online gaming, is building community in ways that are safer than even the playgrounds in our own neighborhoods. So let's have those conversations in ways that we're acknowledging that not only is it better connecting and building the bridge between our agencies, but it absolutely aligns with the mission of the ICC. I know that was a lot of information overload. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Rafi. There's certainly a lot of information gathered there. We'll have to work to unpack that together.
I can email the outline.
Yes,
Yeah, I can email the outline.
It gives us a lot of things to explore for 2020, so we look forward to working with you on that. The MTA, we agree with you wholeheartedly. Obviously, obviously they're not a city agency, so they wouldn't necessarily be here. But it's something that we can consider inviting them to hear directly from young people. I don't know if any other panelists.
It's Rafi. Thank you
Yeah,
so
Rafi.
much for your comments. It was really interesting to hear your perspective, and I really appreciate how much work you're obviously doing in your community, so thank you. I did want to note that we have, oh, sorry, is that working? We have something called the New York City Health Map, which might be able to assist individuals in finding gender-affirming care providers who sort of self-attest that they are going to be attuned to the needs of that community. So if I can connect with you after, I don't know all the details of that program, but that is a resource that we have, and we would appreciate your feedback on that resource and how we can improve it in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you again, Rafi. And actually, I apologize. Usually at the beginning of every meeting, I like to do my preferred pronouns. Andrew Miller, he, him, his. So I apologize for not setting the tone right.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time and for your energy.
Next, we're pleased to have Gerard Hudson from Medgar Evers.
Good evening, everybody. I actually have two things I want to discuss. I've been meeting with my youth in my program, the director of the Beacon program. And I also attended, if you guys remember, maybe a year or two ago, the mayor Flavio did a town hall with the youth. And one thing that came out in that town hall and in my meeting with the youth is that there aren't enough counselors during the school day. Counselors have mandates that they have to fill with certain children, and then more or less the other children are left out because there's really not enough time in the school day to deal with the hundreds of students that are in schools. And I wanted to point this at the Department of Education. Is there any move to help with that, right? You have one, maybe two counselors, school counselors in a school, and there are 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 students in a school. There's no way possible that that one person or even two people can deal with that many students in a school. And similarly, I'll also throw to the Department of Education and or even DYCD, if there's a way, I don't know whether it be through RFPs or something to that effect, that they can get counselors in after school, because the same children that are there during the daytime are also there in the afternoon. And they have similar issues or the same issues that they're having that may need working on. We're all talking about mental health, issues as it relates to students. How can the ICC panel the DOE, DYCD, and all the other agencies, help, in that respect, because it's something that is really, really needed. You know, I have after-school staff, and, you know, they're not trained, it's like, social workers or things of that nature, but we find ourselves in these situations, without anyone during that after-school time to work with the children, and again, during the daytime, there's just too many children. So I would love to hear, about that, if anybody would speak up on that.
So, Serge?
Sure. Two specific issues that you listed there. Number one, you're absolutely correct about the lack of guidance counselors, social workers in our system. We were aware of that, and we just hired, I believe, I know it's just a drop in the bucket, but 85 social workers in particular schools in order to help address crises as they come up in these particular schools. So we are aware of it. We're making steps towards addressing that, and we know we have a lot more to go. But we are aware of that, and we're moving towards closing that gap. As it relates to your needs during the after-school landscape, I would certainly suggest, first of all, after school is in the Office of Community Schools, so it's a different office that I'm part of, but I was responsible for after-school programs for a long time, and this would be my suggestion. That you start at each school and let them know exactly what your needs are after school. When I was responsible for after-school programming, I encouraged CBOs to reach out to their particular principals to say that there's how many, 1, 2, 10, how many, doesn't matter the number of kids that need extra support during our after-school programs, because we do not, let me be positive. We want to make sure that we have an inclusive environment in the after-school landscape to make sure that any and all kids that want to go to after-school can go to after-school. But the reality is that there are children that need extra support. So with those particular kids, to reach out to the school administration to tell them that these are the needs that you need after school. Be it there's a para that could be with a particular student if necessary. If there is a social worker that can come after school, maybe not every day, but even if it is once or twice a week for an hour or two, that will be very helpful, I'm sure. But it is on a school by school basis that you should be addressing those particular issues.
All right, so great, thank you so much for that. Beacon programs, we take students from everywhere. So it's not just a particular one school like that we're housed in. We take neighborhood children, we take charter school children who are co-located. We even take District 75 children if they're able to. So do you think that's realistic in terms of dealing with all of those other children? I mean, it's a good first step, but knowing that we get children from the entire neighborhood, dare I say city, because children travel to our program, not just the ones that are in our neighborhood. You know, I don't know, maybe, I don't know what, I'll start there and see how that could work. Because then, you know, my question would be, who would pay for that? Would that be the after-school program? Would it be the day school? Or, you know, what's the workaround to that? Because I would love to go into that conversation with that in my back pocket and say, this is how we could possibly do that.
I mean, you know, understandably, that is a challenge, right? I mean, some schools will probably not have, some schools may or may not have the funds in order to pay for that particular staff member after school, right? Recession is a rare commodity, right? But it still should not preclude you from having that conversation, just to make sure that the kids that do attend after school have the services that they're entitled to. Okay.
I also want, and I kind of talk about this every year, but to see if, you know, the various agencies that are sitting here could possibly work a little tighter together, right? Instead of operating what I would call like silos, right? Things happen in silos, and then programs like mine end up bearing the burden of the decision making that's happening. So for instance, Department of Health is here. That's what Department of Health. Department of Health unloaded new clearances for people who work with children. They also unloaded that programs needed to have certification, certificate of fitness. And I'm not sure if they met with us to kind of flesh that out a little bit, because when you look at the scope that is under, like, the certificate of fitness, a lot of things are outside of our purview. You know, remembering that we're in DOE buildings, it's not our private place, and there are a lot of responsibilities thrown in there, and I'm like, whoa, you know, I did it, you know, I did the certification, but at the same time, I'm like, there's no way we can fulfill all these things, and it's one thing to say, oh, don't worry about it, you know, it's gonna go fine, and then until something happens, and they're gonna say, well, in writing, it says this, and they're gonna hold us to that. And, you know, so as it relates to certificate of fitness requirements, I'm thinking maybe they should create something different for our type of programs, because the way it's written is like, you know, we're custodians, right? To have access to all these things and are responsible for all of this, because in the absence of custodians, we're the ones with the certificates in the buildings. And then the new clearances take really, really long, and no one really gets back to you. Before, it was long, but at least you get the paperwork. Now, you do all these clearances, it takes you a really long time to onboard someone, and by then they find another job. And then when they've completed the process, the paperwork that you need on site isn't sent to you. You have to now call someone or email someone to death to get it back, to have it on site. So, I don't know if there's a way to get around these things, but I do want to ask that the agencies work together. You know, we're funded through DYCD, and we're licensed by the Department of Health, and we're in a DOE building. You know, there are a lot of hands that we have to work with, and all the hands don't speak together. They don't do their meetings together. So then now we're trying to service 5 to 6 people, agencies, at the same time, and it makes it really, really hard. It doesn't have to be that hard. If we can make a task force maybe of those agencies that deal with youth, specifically, in terms of policy making and changes, because you need to see how it affects the people that are doing it. Because, you know, we always say to DYCD, give us more money to do the work. And we get more money, but we get 3 times the work, because the agencies will work together, and we have to work really, really hard to make it work for everybody else. And, you know, and one more thing I'll put in there is that the different agencies that have, like NYPD, I see here, ACS I saw here, we need to also get it together. We have youth programs. Youth programs run at least at a minimum until 6 o'clock. Try finding somebody from those agencies after that, at that time. You can't find them. People are leaving earlier than that, and I'm saying, wouldn't it make sense to be open up to normal programming time? I think that would make a lot of sense to have somebody there. And I'm speaking from experience. I've called, even recently I called, you know, I had to call CPS, ACS after 6 or minutes to 6 or 5:30. No one answers the phone. I've got to be calling all over the place to find people to do our responsibilities that we have as mandated reporters and all that, you know, great stuff. NYPD youth officers, they get off at 4 or 5 o'clock. We're there till a minimum 6 o'clock in the afternoon. We need people who are available, who we can utilize in our areas as programs. And I'm speaking as one person out of 91 Beacon programs, and there are other types of programs, Sonic programs, Compass programs, who possibly could be experiencing these kind of issues. So I don't know how we can make those things happen, and I'd love to hear from you guys to see how we can tighten up the programming and the timing that people are available, because, you know, programs start anywhere from 2:30 to at minimum 6. I have programs that go till 8, 9 o'clock at night for the youth in the community. So I would love to hear from you guys. I know I said a lot, I'm sorry.
Well, thank you very much. There's a lot there, but I can tell you, Commissioner Chung is very much aware of the concerns about the clearance process. We've been actually working very closely with other partner agencies and raising those concerns with the state, so be tuned on that, but we agree. In terms of, again, I like what DOE had to say about working with councils. We obviously value a strong partnership between us and DOE, which is why, as part of the RFP process for Beacons and for Compass, we require the school partnership agreement, because only schools and programs that work together are successful about helping that young person. With that said, obviously you know that for the first time since the history of the Beacon program, just recently we increased the funding from $400,000 to 600,000, yes, we have a longer ways to go, and maybe, having our organizations provide some type of council services. The question is, how much would that cost and where would that funding come from? And also, I wanna say, we also have, if there are counseling services, we have RHY staff here. You don't necessarily have to be a runaway homeless youth to utilize our drop-in centers, which there are 8 across the 5 boroughs, and 5 of them are open 24/7, and they are there to help you. So, thank you. I don't know if any other member agencies have any comments, questions? Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for always being here. Next, I'd like to call David Calvert from Youth Build NYC. We actually worked together on starting up the city council's Youth Build initiative, so it's good to see you, David.
That's correct, thank you. I have about 15 copies.
Sure.
Yeah, this is absolutely fantastic to see all these agencies, you know, at least trying to do this collaboration thing. I really appreciate it. I'm also the director of a collaborative that represents all the youth build programs in New York City, which is 9 programs right now. Our 9 programs that do youth build have spread around the country now. So now we have 260 youth builds in the country, and now we have 80 more overseas. So we're in 23 other countries. It's something that started here in East Harlem when I was 24 years old, and a group of teenagers wanted to do a building, and we started renovating the building. Next thing you know, we had a program. Next thing you know, we took it to the city council and the board of estimates in those days, and got it funded citywide, and started spreading it around the country and around the world. So it's basically a testimony to the fact that young people, when they're out of work and out of school and need some education, need some vocational help, and need some counseling, need some support, are very eager to get down and get busy. And then just looking for an opportunity, and normally those opportunities do not come for many of our young people. Youth Build gives them a chance. There's a lot of other people in this room that are giving their young people a chance too, and all of that matters. I really have a couple of quick messages. I'm not that long-winded usually. I do want to say that virtually every agency sitting up here is actually supporting youth build in some way right now. Basically, we get funded through the UICD, the city council is active every year, the NYPD comes and gives talks to our young people. When the NYPD has problems in our neighborhood in East Harlem, they come and sit down and we work out plans on how to get things done. The fire department comes and does recruitment for their young people to come and get jobs. So do other agencies in this place. Department of Buildings comes and talks to us. HPD helps us with getting access to housing sites that we can work on. We renovate buildings. We've renovated nationally now 35,000 units of low-income housing with young people that were out of work and out of school. In East Harlem, we've done 13 gut rehabs. Basically, we're mobilizing young people in a positive way, and the agencies sitting here are part of that mix. Another one is the Department of Education. The District 79 is a very close ally of every youth build program in the city. Fantastic work. WPP in City Hall is a big supporter. ACS, we work with the libraries, health and hospitals, parks, NYCHA. Right now we're in meetings with high-level people at NYCHA about setting up a citywide partnership. We have small MOUs in some sites, but we're looking to build a citywide MOU with a 10-year plan that the chief is really pushing this through as well. District attorneys, corrections, probation, anyway. So a little bit what you guys are trying to do, I think we're sort of partners with you in all ways. The second thing I want to talk about is some suggestions for an ICC. And so, and we start on the second page of what I sent there. One is to really put heads together and find ways to make the contract negotiations for funded agencies to be much more efficient. As many of you know, there are programs that are funded where they know before July 1st that they're going to get funding. That's not true in our case. We get funded through discretionary funds. And so those grants are announced in the end of June. Contracts are authorized usually sometime in July. Sometime in September it gets to the MOCs, to the Mayor's Office of Contract Services. Sometime in October it gets to the local agency, in our case BYCD. And then there's a period of 3 or 4 months of negotiations. And during that time we're running a program. and we're running it with no money. I do not know how we do it, but I know that most agencies don't have to deal with that kind of stuff. We have no money and we're running a full-fledged program. So one help we get is the fund for the city of New York, and probably a lot of people in this room know about this. The fund for the city has about $60 million of funds that they give out in revolving loans, bridge loans. But they're not available until, and they're at no interest, they're not available until you get your budget approved by your contracting agency. That can be 3-4 months into the process. So, you know, there's a lot of smart people in this room. It would be nice to find ways to really facilitate this process, to make the contract negotiation process not be 4 and 5 months, but 2 and 3 weeks would be awesome. It would make everything better down in the community. So that's a big lift and a big request that we have. A second one is these, to sort of build as much as possible horizontal planning relationships on things. We, the community out here, we, the civic sector, are your absolute allies. And we see you as our absolute allies. And we just wanna build a shared kind of partnership. We all have the same mission, and that's to make this damn city work better. And so anything we can do to make that happen, anything you guys can do to make that happen, we all wanna do it together. So just to find ways to be as horizontal and as shared in planning as possible. And, you know, that may seem, normal or logical, but it's not always what happens. And sometimes we feel like we're on the outside looking in. So that's not the way it should be, because we're all out here doing this thing together. The third thing is on this issue of best practices, I've noticed that the city has gotten really good about, you know, saying they're doing something good in Chicago, we're gonna bring that over here now. Or they're doing a really interesting project in Detroit, let's bring that and try that out in New York. I've seen New York reach out to other places around the country, around the world for ideas. And then now we're talking about learning from Norway about prison systems. Excellent. You know, I love that the city's doing that, not act like we're the only ones that have ideas. But we also have a lot of great stuff going on in New York that I think we should take national. And, you know, I think there should be a dog and pony show that shows why crime has gone down 27 consecutive years in New York City. Why our high school achievements are getting better and better, and we're up to like, I think it's 93% graduation rates. You know, why is it that you know, we have the best public housing in the country? You know, what is it about New York that's making that happen? And someone should put their finger on that thing, and put it into a model that cities around the country. And why are we so good on immigration? No one else is. You know, why are we so good on libraries and other people having trouble with that? Why do we continue to attract tourism when we didn't attract any in the 80s? You know, we have rebuilt this city that was falling apart. Some of you are younger than I am. I know that. I'm 66. In the 70s and 80s, our city was falling down broke. There were 8,000 buildings that went vacant in 2-year periods in the late 70s and got taken over by the city in foreclosure. All those buildings had no answers. And then people like me squatted those buildings and lived in those buildings. We started to rebuild the city up, and we brought this city back through hard work. And a lot of people in this room were part of making that happen. And all these agencies were too. So somehow we gotta take the lessons we have and take those out to cities and rural areas around the country and help them, you know, learn how to be more welcoming to immigration, learn how to be more welcoming to community policing, learn how to be more respectful of de-escalating violence, learn how to have better gun laws, learn how to sort of really improve what's going on out there. Our country needs it, and maybe they'll start electing better people out there too. Then the third thing is, I say the fourth thing, is to pay close attention to the voices of youth. And when I say that, I mean especially the young people who are the ones in trouble. Sometimes when you create a blue chip commission of young people about what to do about things, it's young people already on a fast track to wrong science, you know? So I'm talking about young people that are dropped out of school, young people that are slipping and sliding and juking and jiving out here and really in trouble. You know, those young people are the ones that really have to be involved in making policy. So to do that, go to the places where they are, and they are in youth build, for example. There are a lot of other places too. So we're having a conference this winter of 200 plus youth build students. I'm actually going to a meeting tomorrow with young people playing in that conference to figure out an agenda for the 2020s, for the next 10 years for New York City. And we're gonna promote that with everybody, and we want every agency, including the ICC, to take those recommendations and see what can we do about these things. Can we, of these 15 recommendations, can we get 10 of them done in the next 2 years? Let's go do that. And we did that back in the 1980s, the early 1980s in East Harlem. The youth action agenda, a youth agenda for the 80s, and we ended up doing it all because we busted our asses doing it. And so I'm including the whole start of youth build. So I think that getting young people to be involved in the planning and then follow up by backing them up in gaining that vision and building up the city around the needs that they are identifying and living through is a really smart thing for this ICC. And the other piece I have here is increased funding. You know, I mean, DYCD, for example, is always such a small agency vis-a-vis the entire city budget. And you know, it's hard for the agency itself to go and advocate with the mayor for funds. But the ICC may be in a position as a shared agency, along with the people in this room, and certainly I'm in on this, to push the city to really put more funding in these programs, so that instead of 9 programs here, there's 18 and 25. So there's really access for every young person to get what they need, because you know that's just a smart investment in our city and our young people. So those are my suggestions. I think that if anybody has any questions, I'm really glad to respond or share ideas. Those are the main points I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I certainly hear you with the discretionary funding process. It's always a complicated thing.
Murder.
We, from DYCD, we try to do our best to, once they get cleared by MOX and the city council, I know our discretionary team goes to town with those contracts and tries to get the process as soon as possible. We know there's a lot of challenges on the way there, and I look forward to continue to work with you about how we can.
And we like your guys, but they're up against a tough system.
And if you know of any organization that gets funded through discretionary funding, they could actually reach out to me and I could sort of assist them during the way. And again, the ICC looks forward to working with you on all the issues that you laid in your testimony. Increased funding, one thing I just want to again highlight, we're almost $1 billion agency. I think we get close to that. And it was very related to the de Blasio administration. During the last term of the Bloomberg administration, our budget was $350 million. So to almost triple your budget means that obviously the city itself as a whole is really invested in young people. And if you look at youth service agencies across the board, I'm sure you'll see a significant increase in resources as well. Anyone else? Comments? Questions? Thank you, David.
Yeah, I don't want to sound like I'm pandering, but I think Mayor de Blasio is doing a fantastic job. And I wish the Daily News would get that message. Thank you.
Next up, I'd like to call Anya Fleury. If I mispronounced your name, I apologize, from Mega Efforts.
My name is Anaya. This is my 4th year as a member of the Faculty Beginning Program, as a part of the Youth Council. And I came to talk about their issue of not receiving enough medical support at schools. The ratio for nurses to schools is 750 kids to each nurse, and 59% of schools are either at or above that ratio. So then we have all these kids but not enough nurses to take care of the kids when they get hurt. And I think 39% of schools don't have a full-time nurse. So there's certain times where students get hurt and there's no nurse there. So I think that each school should at least have one nurse, one full-time nurse there in order to accommodate for the students' health.
Thank you. What brings that issue to life for you? Like, what's has it personally impacted you or a
Maybe
friend or
not
family member?
not me, because my school downstairs has a whole clinic, has a doctor, dentist. But like my sister's school, her school doesn't have a full-time nurse there. It comes and then leaves to go to another school. There was one time she fell. I don't remember what she was doing, but she fell, and I think either she busted her lip. I don't know, but she couldn't. There was no nurse there. So when we was coming up issues, this one came to me.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up, Jessica Court.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Is that on the microphone? Is that on? Check that out. Here. It's on, okay.
I've also attended the Flatbush Weekend Center for like about 3-4 years. Today I'm here to talk about the lack of guidance counselors in high schools, especially. So at my high school, there's only one guidance counselor, and the Association of American Guidance Counselors, I don't know what it's called, counselors. It says that the ratio is supposed to be 250 students to one counselor, and only 3 states meet that recommendation. But we are 165 over than what we should be. And my suggestion is that we should have guidance counselors for each grade, because only some schools do that. But I think that we should have that because mainly guidance counselors only look at juniors and seniors because they're the ones moving into college. But I know as a student that my guidance counselor will probably never see me until junior year. And I think that we should get the opportunity to see the guidance counselor because it also affects the way that we learn. Because we all go through problems and we need some guidance in some way. And without that, us having that makes it difficult to process.
Thank you, Jessica. Appreciate it. Next up, Lydia, I believe the last name is Palmer.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lydia Palmer, and I am a youth leader from the New York Civil Liberties Union's Teen Activist Project. Today I will be talking about the importance of comprehensive sexuality education. New York City's youth deserve to have a medically accurate, comprehensive, and inclusive sex education curriculum. However, there are many myths about sexuality education that have prevented youth from learning this information. One of the most prominent of these myths is that comprehensive sex education curricula encourage students to have sex. These curricula help young people to make informed and healthy decisions about their bodies and relationships. Furthermore, sex education has been proven to delay sexual interactions. Research by Douglas Kirby from the National Campaign to End Teen and Unplanned Pregnancy shows that pregnancy prevention programs that include thorough sex education have the following positive effects. 30% of program members had sex less frequently and sometimes returned to abstinence. 60% of program members reduced unprotected sex, and 40% of program members delayed sexual initiation and reduced the number of sexual partners or increased condom and contraceptive use.
In addition, the National Survey of Family Growth recently conducted a survey to observe whether comprehensive sexuality education was worthwhile for teens ages 15 to 19. The survey showed that teens who had taken a comprehensive sexuality class were 50% less likely to report a pregnancy than teens who received abstinence-only education. Far from encouraging unsafe sexual interactions, comprehensive sex ed allowed students to exercise better judgment and make more informed decisions. Comprehensive sex ed curriculum are completely age appropriate. Planned Parenthood lists the objectives of sexual education as abstinence, HIV/AIDS, human anatomy, bullying, pregnancy, sexual decision-making, dating relationships, pregnancy options, sexually transmitted infection prevention, dating violence, pregnancy prevention, teen pregnancy, gender and orientation, and puberty. Many of these topics are age-appropriate for young children, including bullying, human anatomy, and gender and orientation. One of the goals of comprehensive sex education is to lessen homophobia and transphobia by teaching young children to be accepting of people of different sexual orientations and gender identities. Parents also find sex education curricula to be beneficial. A study conducted by the Kennedy School of Government, Kaiser Family Foundation, and NPR found that over 90% of parents of middle and high school students believe it's important for schools to offer age-appropriate sex ed. Although the current state of comprehensive sexuality education curricula has helped many young people, it has fallen short for many others. LGBTQ youth need safe, supportive learning spaces in which to learn about healthy practices surrounding sexual activity. Current sex ed curricula, however, promote a heteronormative culture and exclude content about LGBTQ+ relationships and safe sex. Access to comprehensive sex education is a right that all students deserve. Recently, the New York City Council approved a resolution that could be crucial for young folks. The resolution calls for the New York City Department of Education to adopt all of the policy recommendations of the Mayor's Sexual Health Education Task Force. The Council also asked the DOE to require that students at all grade levels get comprehensive sexual health education on a regular basis. I hope that these recommendations are adopted and that this can be widespread in New York State.
Thank you, Lydia. Does anyone? Thank you. Next, Aurelio Castro.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to say thank you for allowing us to speak on behalf of New York City Youth. My name is Adel Castro, and I'm a senior in high school, as well as an organizer for the New York Civil Liberty Union's Teen Activist Project. New York City is undeniably one of the most diverse cities in the United States. Our position as a globally renowned cultural center, however, was and is only possible through immigration. For example, Ellis Island, which while in operation welcomed over 12 million immigrants to the New York harbor, is a testament to our city's vast historical connection with immigrants. Our current political climate is plagued by controversy over immigration policy, which often leads to prejudicial and discriminatory mistreatment towards immigrants right here in New York City. In early 2017, President Donald Trump publicly introduced a series of executive orders which altered the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement's, colloquially termed ICE, policies on detaining and deporting immigrants. Among its changes were making ICE's focus primarily on targeting any reportedly unauthorized immigrant, rather than those only with prior convictions. Later, on July 14, 2019, a nationwide effort to detain immigrants was to purportedly take place. When the day finally came, the streets of my own neighborhood of Sunset Park, Brooklyn, which is comprised predominantly of immigrants, were deserted. ICE officers are increasingly using coercive tactics, such as impersonating themselves as civil service officers under the guise of mere discussion, which prey on language barriers and lack of knowledge of rights. Immigrants come to the United States, and New York City especially, in hopes of fleeing civil unrest in their home countries or simply to seek a better life for themselves and their families. They should not be exploited or met with deception. As someone whose father was an undocumented immigrant for years while caring for me in my youth, and as someone who goes to school with friends who have presently undocumented family members, I can confidently say current policies towards immigrants pose an egregious burden towards the unlikeliest of people, and even stretch into the sectors of education and mental health. A study conducted by the American Journal of Public Health recently, for instance, indicates that the mental health of Hispanics and Latinos, as defined exclusively by the number of poor mental health days experienced, increased significantly as more aggressive ICE arrests were made in recent years. New York City students should not be worrying about whether or not they will come home to a parent. They should be focused on attaining a quality education. In a time when New York City's population is becoming characterized more and more by immigrants, the issues shrouding immigrant policy have all the more impact on youth. The New York Civil Liberties Union is committed to fighting these attacks against our immigrant communities. We ask that the Department of Education protect the rights of immigrant students and their families. Commit to making our schools a sanctuary for those most vulnerable. As a Declaration of Independence so eloquently states, all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. These words, written 243 years ago, must still reverberate within each and every one of us, particularly when thinking of those who have come to our city with nothing but reverence and admiration. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Definitely. Next, Babo Gay. Hope I pronounced it properly.
Sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Babu Gay, and I'm a 17-year-old student activist from the Bronx with the Teen Activist Project. I'm here to tell you about the state of student surveillance in New York City that makes the most diverse school system in the nation also the most segregated. Schools are gradually moving towards a trend that indicates to students that they are not to be trusted, with surveillance that treats students like criminals that must be invasively monitored rather than treating them as this nation's future doctors, lawyers, engineers, etc. This constant surveillance gives students and parents the message that schools are watching us, waiting for us to cause trouble, rather than looking after us and ensuring our well-being and successful growth. This all connects to the school-to-prison pipeline. Once students realize they are under constant surveillance, students become discouraged from engaging in peaceful assembly, joining clubs, and voicing their opinions. Students know that it isn't there to help them, but to watch them. Many argue that police and metal detectors keep us safe, especially in the era of mass shootings. But metal detectors actually signify danger, not safety. The metal detectors in schools have existed before the rise of mass shootings. Last year, at a town hall, in response to the Midori Stoneman Douglas High School shooting in Parkland, Florida, Mayor Bill de Blasio said that only about 90 of the city's over 1,000 high schools are equipped with metal detectors daily. That may sound like just a few, but in reality, this translates to 93,000 New York City students confronted by contraptions that introduce them to the experience of a criminal. What makes the other remaining schools so safe? What makes my school, Bronx Science, safer than DeWitt Clinton? Two schools not even a block away from each other in my neighborhood. One is populated by a majority of lower scoring Black and Latinx students, while the other is 88% Asian American and white. I don't even have to tell you which school requires its students to be met every morning by machines designed to deter criminals from accessing buildings with concealed weapons. What is the criteria in place that makes DeWitt Clinton unsafe and all the other schools that have metal detectors? What did my middle school friends that ended up at Clinton, because it's their zone school, do differently than I? Why was the higher score on the SHSAT what set me apart and allowed me to escape from the common narrative for a young person that looks like me in the neighborhood that I come from, a criminal in the making? The mindset of police and metal detectors keeping us safe is one that predatory companies that manufacture these surveillance devices use to prey on us for profit. Not only does it work to the benefit of these companies, but it perpetuates the school-to-prison pipeline, leading to the mass incarceration of Black and brown students. It isn't just metal detectors either. The Lockport School District is working to implement facial recognition as a part of their surveillance technology, and it's going to spread. This surveillance technology, we know, has been proven to have a history of being far less accurate in identifying women, people of color, and wait for it, young people in schools. So this leads to the risk of harmful misidentifications and more. Is this really the vision for school communities that we should be looking towards, that we should be working towards? One where we invest in the illusion of safety instead of culturally responsive and reflective curriculums, or professional development trainings that inform teachers on how to connect with students and observe irregular behavior that may indicate trauma or isolation, or guidance counselors that give students an outlet to express frustrations. We need to start empowering students rather than evoking fear. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to call Nazira Sisi. Hopefully I pronounced that properly.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Nazira Sisi, and I am a senior at Promise Academy 2 and an organizer at the Teen Activist Project with the New York Civil Liberties Union. $5 is what I am given on the days that my mother works. $5 for my breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and less if my siblings need some money too. If I don't have money, I eat at home if I can find something to make for me and my siblings. $2.75 is the price for a one-trip Metro card. $5.50 round trip to get to school or work and back home. I am gracious enough my school provides me with a Metro card, but that does not cover weekends or after 8:30. Yet, my situation is not severe at all. The poverty rate for New York City fell to 17.3% in 2018, and the child poverty rate, 23.8%. That is almost 1 in 5 New Yorkers in poverty, and 1 in 4 child New Yorkers in poverty. 45.1% of New York City is living at or near the poverty rate. That is nearly half of all New Yorkers near poverty. Every year, there's around $240 million lost to fare evasion. The MTA Chief's Financial Officer, Robert Foran, stated that Governor Cuomo's plan to hire 500 new MTA police officers would cost $249 million over the next 4 years. If the MTA is losing $240 million and putting in $249 million, it is waging a war on poverty rather than fare evasion. This $249 million is going to 500 police officers in different parts of the MTA. The presence of hostility in our train stations runs the risk of further criminalizing poverty and making poor people's lives more difficult while doing nothing to get at the root causes of homelessness. The MTA is the biggest use of transport in New York. So adding cops may serve as a deterrent, but may also cause situations to escalate, as they will be also charged with enforcing quality of life issues, which can include offenses tied directly to a person's poverty, like sleeping on the subway. With the transport system being so huge, it still faces massive delays and hardships for the riders. The price to ride is climbing, yet the service seems to be on a decline. Yet millions of dollars are going towards getting riders to pay. I understand that there needs to be a profit to run the train system. However, on top of all of these existing issues, adding police will not be beneficial to the riders and may lead to an overall negative culture towards the MTA. Just last month, 19-year-old Adrian Napier was held at gunpoint by around 10 police officers for supposedly having a gun, sitting in the train while all the other passengers ran away from him like the plague. He asked for them to call his mother, not knowing if he was going to make it out alive. His arms up with no plan to run, tackled by several police officers with their guns out. The addition of NYPD in our trains runs the risk of criminalizing youth, and specifically youth of color, continuing to police them in all aspects of society. Before deciding to use police officers for the safety of MTA workers, I ask you all to inquire whose safety is being threatened with them there. These 500 new police officers will be sending a symbol of unsafety. The city, the state, and the federal government would be better served investing resources towards solutions that address poverty, not criminalize it.
Thank you, Nazira, for your testimony. Next, I'd like to call Yasmin Abdel Salam.
Hello, everyone.
Good afternoon.
My name is Yasmin Abdel Salam. I'm a senior at Fort Hamilton High School,
and I'm a youth organizer from the New York Civil Liberties Union's Teen Activist Project. Today I'm going to be talking about the need to prioritize mental health in all aspects of society and especially in schools. Okay. So in the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson states that the government must guarantee its citizens the rights to liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. Liberty and property are both tangible rights and can be easily defended by the government. But when it comes to the happiness of its citizens, there are many arguments on whether or not it should be the government's role to support happiness. The unfortunate truth is that being happy is only considered a luxury in today's society, as only 33% of Americans report being happy. And evidently, the lack of care people receive for their mental health causes this problem and many other problems throughout the nation, and especially in our beloved city of New York. Access to receiving mental health care is based on many different factors, and especially a person's socioeconomic status, rather than an equal opportunity for all people. This lack of access is so critical as today's school children are experiencing record levels of depression and anxiety amongst multiple forms of trauma. Approximately 72% of children in the United States will have experienced at least one major stressful event, such as witnessing violence, experiencing abuse, or experiencing the loss of a loved one before the age of 18. Studies also show that African Americans with PTSD experience significantly more impairment due to trauma, indicating greater difficulty carrying out daily activities and increased barriers to receiving effective treatment. Not only do people of color suffer from this, but their mental health issues have an increased likelihood of being passed down to their children, inhibiting further generations from growing, which creates a terrible cycle of trauma. We need to place more emphasis on mental health in schools and train teachers better on how to recognize signs of mental illnesses and how to help their students who suffer from mental illnesses rather than penalize people and students. It is important that young people are taught the importance of mental health from an early age so that we can learn how to cope in various situations and to understand how to move forward in a healthy manner. We need more of an emphasis on restorative justice in all aspects of society, especially in schools, as it would help us begin to humanize each other and grow, rather than promote this vicious, punitive system that continues to neglect our humanity. This can only be done by hiring more social workers, guidance counselors, and school nurses, as New York City public schools face a critical shortage of these personnel. To keep students safe, we need to invest in resources and relationships that help students feel supported rather than criminalized. We want to have people in our schools who we feel comfortable talking to about our problems, or else our mental health could get worse and deteriorate. By investing resources into hiring these essential school personnel, you are investing in us and our well-being. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to call Ram Robinson from the Center for Community Alternatives.
Good evening, good afternoon. My name is Ron Robinson. I'm with the Center for Community Alternatives. I'm the Director of Youth and Community Engagement here. And what I would like to talk about today is the GYCD SYEP, the Summer Youth Employment Program. The Summer Youth Employment Program is, as we all know, is a wonderful program that has a historical history here in our city, which provides young adults early work experience. And a lot of these early work experiences they probably would not have achieved independently, without the assistance of the program. As of last year, what I wanted to actually hone in and speak about is the Special Initiative Project, which was a project which was a collaboration in the Mayor's Office, which is part of the Mayor's Action Plan, in collaboration with NYCHAD as well as DYCD to provide youth who reside in NYCHAD housing the opportunity to have the first rights at receiving employment. The agency which I work for, we were a provider for this particular program, but we wanted to speak about just the possible ways in which we could enhance this program and make it more robust, so that more youth are able to take advantage of this particular opportunity. To despite the fact that this is such a wonderful idea and an excellent concept, we did just a couple of questions that, for being a provider, being a former provider, that we would like to pose as to how we could assist and be a part of making this program more, to be able to be accessible by residents who live in the NYCHA complex. And one of the challenges that we've experienced by being a provider is the oversaturation of SYP providers within a particular community. Like, for example, we live in the area in which we service. There appears to be approximately 5 to 7 other providers that's actually trying to access the same pool, and that really doesn't, it really isn't beneficial for the participants, for the youth that live in the particular area. What we find is that it causes a lot of confusion and a lot of discouragement, and also especially a new initiative that wasn't really branded in the community. So we just wanted to ask some questions as to how could we assist the residents of those NYCHA establishments to better be connected with those services.
Thank you very much. We were very excited about the new initiatives this year. Obviously, we know there is a new set of challenges anytime you launch a new RFP and the new program models, and that was obviously informed by a task force that was commissioned by the City Council and the Mayor's Office, and included a whole cadre of workforce development specialists to guide this model. But yes, we know there's more work to do. We did increase the number of contractors we had to provide SYEP because we knew there was a need to increase the capacity of the overall system. So I think we almost doubled the capacity up to 195 contractors. And again, the idea of that is to ensure that if we get additional dollars added, that there's more flexibility in terms of our growth that we can experience in SYEP, but also to meet the more local needs. But we hear you. We're going to connect you with our SYEP folks about planning for next year.
Well, one other question that I just wanted to put up with that, and I thank you for your response. What steps will we take to be able to have community residents or community partners to be a part of those planning and those focus groups?
Anytime we have an RFP, we solicit public solicitation in terms of both the concept paper, but also in terms of when we do the rollout, we have those type of feedback. But right here we have NYCHA at the table, and we're going to kind of work with you to help guide the SYEP program next year, and we'll work with you as well to see what suggestions you have that we could make next year smoother. Because anytime you have a program that runs like new contracts, there are obviously going to be some hiccups that we'd like to address. So next year.
All right, thank you.
Can I just ask you your question, especially regarding the MAP work, because my program is also a part of the MAP program, and one of the things that if you really want, the community really want to be a part of it, is to attend the local stat meetings for each particular development, which is going on actually right now. I was going to say around this particular time period, where there's different stakeholder meetings and there's different meetings within everybody, that everybody from the community is invited to, depending on the time. There's refreshments or dinners actually, and so this will be the time, now would be a great time or for the upcoming calendar year when they have those meetings, and especially the closer we get to SYEP season, for people who are interested to really stake your to really be loud and say that you want to be a part of this within the MAP community, within the MAP world.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I want to call Alaya Logan. Welcome.
Hi everyone. I want to first thank you all so much for being here. My name is Aaliyah Logan, and I'm a 17-year-old Jamaican American youth advocate from the Bronx. And I'm the operational manager at the New York Civil Liberties Union, the Teen Activist Project. By participating in the Teen Activist Project, I have been part of so many amazing opportunities. where I'm able to reclaim my power and share my experiences in the school system that was designed to oppress my peers and myself. New York City public schools depend heavily on law enforcement agents and school safety personnel, which funnel our youth into the criminal justice system as part of the school-to-prison pipeline. The pipeline encompasses direct and indirect interactions with law enforcement in schools. The implementation of metal detectors in schools, for example, has proven to be discriminatory towards students of color. At least 90% of students are Black or Latinx. I grew up in a community where there was police officers on the street corner, in front of the train station, inside and outside of every school building that I entered, and it was extremely difficult to be able to succeed in a system that prioritized the value of law enforcement agents instead of the well-being of every student. I am now a senior at NYC School. It's a high school located in SoCo. Attending the school was a huge transition from what I was familiar with in the Bronx. My 3 older siblings attend school in our community, and I knew I couldn't attend school in the Bronx because of the amount of metal detectors and police officers present inside and, like I said, outside of my school buildings. My middle school was connected to another high school, and they were always surrounded us, and metal detectors create an unsafe school environment where students like myself feel constantly criminalized and not trusted by the administration. Last year, my school had a random metal detector screening. As I got off the train and walked to school, I saw multiple NYPD cars parked outside of the school. I felt unsafe and afraid to enter the school building. When I walked through the door, I was not greeted with a smile or positive energy. I was aggressively told to take everything out of my bag and walk through the screen, the scanner. I was used to this experience because of the criminalization in my community, but I had never expected that to happen in a high school that was predominantly white. That was the reason why I left the Bronx, but although I left, I was still subject to that form of racism. It is clear that my experiences as a Black student would not change in any different borough. Throughout the day, I spoke to my Black and brown friends to see if they had a similar reaction and experience as mine. They told stories of how they were pushed against a wall and then searched, told to remove their sneakers and check if they had anything hidden. It was a traumatizing experience for us all. The NYCOU has tried to obtain records on metal detectors, where they are located and how many exist in our schools. We sent a request to the City Council and they told us that they did not keep that data. We then went to the Department of Education and received the same response. Amendments passed in the Student Safety Act a few years ago require reporting on metal detectors. We are asking for transparency and accountability for all of our students in schools. Release this information now. Metal detectors should not be allowed in our schools. It is unacceptable for students to be late to class because of the long lines on metal detectors. The New York City Department of Education must start valuing the experiences and the lives of every single student that enters the classroom. We are saying that we do not need interactions with the criminal justice system to feel safe. We are saying that we do not need interactions with the criminal justice system to have an education. I'm asking you all, every person in this room, to reimagine and dismantle our idea of the education system. This education system has been racist, sexist, classist, homophobic, transphobic, and ableist. And it is important that we reimagine it to create a better education system. Thank you.
Rafi, did you work on that together? Next up, Kervins Marcellus, my brothers and sisters keeper.
Hi everybody, my name is Kervins Marcellus. I'm from Haiti literally, was born and raised and then moved to the US. I work with my brothers and sisters keeper in New York City Youth Council on behalf of BY City and YDI. What we're doing as a work is we're a group of young people, young guys, young adults, still in high school. Some of us are in college, like I am right now. We try to figure out like what the things going on in New York City for young people our age, and then what do they need, or if there were some opportunities that are being here for them, and also if there are some money being put and being properly used, because we all know that some money are being put for some into the education, but not every student knows about what opportunity that they have. For example, I'm pulling up a survey result from last year that we actually surveyed 220 students. We got the results, so we traveled to California to present to the whole Beacon National Conference. And we also found out that 41.5% of the students didn't know that the Point Foundation Scholarship was available for students into the LGBTQ community. And also, this year we had to go to the Teen State the Mets event, which is literally, we had about 513 young people that we surveyed. And a lot of them were saying that they do not feel comfortable in their school, like they have somebody to talk to. If they have something going on, like they will feel retaliated or anything like that. So this is something that I think the DOE needs to take in consideration, because it is really important that the student really feel comfortable in their school. And also going through the school, talking about doing work with the young adults. And then we actually started with the NYPD Youth Council that they do in East New York. And some of them were also saying that they need more great relationship with the police, because some of them were literally saying that they're afraid when they see a cop car, because they feel afraid because they're black and all the stuff like that. So it is what we're doing right now, and we're still going with it. Some of us are actually presenting to the youth board actually. That's why I'm the only one presenting the group right here, but we are actually 22 young adults in the whole group, and we're doing that, and we're trying to make it an adult and youth partnership. Like, it's not only the adult doing everything, but we feel like our saying is we're the voice of the voiceless. We feel that we are in a position of empowerment. Whatever the young adult like us needs outside, we're supposed to take it in consideration and bring it to the people in power, and then who have the power to do stuff for them. And this is how it is. Like, school and police, this is what they was concerned about: gun violence and education. So I think the DOE needs to do some more work in letting them go and making sure that all New York City high school has equal opportunities for every single student in here. Because if some students have certain opportunities and some do not, it becomes unfair. Like certain area, they do have, like again and again in the survey, some of them did not know like that. At least 50% of them did not know that 8th graders were allowed to take Regent and also take some college classes to high school and have credit for them. So I think this is something that needs to be addressed to, and then have it in there so all New York City high school students have the equal opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. So I don't have any more cards left. Our hearing is open until 6 p.m. Is there anyone present here that would like to testify that has not had the opportunity yet? If not, so we're gonna keep this session open. Thank you. What I heard today was a lot about the need for us to recognize the rights of LGBT young people and how they access services, about the need for runaway and homeless youth services, more of that, the need for mental health services, the need for school counselors, the need for nurses, the need to look at the issue of metal detectors at DOE facility, the issue about access to transportation for young people, about the idea that young people should have access to a Metro card, not only during the school day, but in the evenings, on the weekends, the need for more greater sex education curriculum. We heard the issues from Youth Build, we thank them for coming as well, and the issue about SYP, how we could work more collaboratively together next year, as well as issues with the state clearance process. Oh, we do have someone. Next, and thank you, Brian Ombrowski from Vibrant.
Good afternoon. So I came here today just to, initially just to sort of be a support to the young people and hear from the community about the issues that, that impact young people across all the various social service systems in the city. And then after hearing everything about the education system, as the parent of a 5-year-old who we just sort of stumbled upon sort of the gifted and talented system, I just wanted to speak and advocate on behalf of young people who have gifts and talents, but in our current educational system may not have the family support to help them navigate through the various opportunities that our school system offers. And so just very briefly, in our very brief experience with the educational system, it's become very clear to us how much having social capital as a parent and being able to navigate all of the resources that are available to students in the New York City school system provides such a tremendous advantage to youth. And there are an awful lot of young people who, and actually I have a colleague who this would describe her situation perfectly, where they themselves have a great deal of aptitude and natural ability, but without the family, for whatever reason, that has the ability to navigate the various school system, the school system, and just other resources throughout the city. There are opportunities that are missed. And so to the extent that there can be cross-systems work in supporting families, to support youth, that would be fantastic. So that is all.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else to testify? And if anyone's shy, we actually are accepting testimony in writing at ICC at the ICC at dycd.nyc.gov.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would like to thank everyone in here, President, of course, and members of the panel. Before anything, and let me just go on the mic.
Just for the record, your name.
Yes, absolutely. I'm about to do that. Thank you. So my name is Fe, F-E, Floriman. I'm presently the chair of the Youth and Education Committee with Unit Board 12. And I am one of the organizers and also founder of the Youth and Police Built-in Bridges, which is an initiative that we started 5 years ago. And I really want to deeply thank you for the opportunity to allow me to just share a few words. But one of the things that I really wanted to go on record is that I would like to see this administration, in particular the Department of Education, Police Department, which I've been working, side by side, and of course the community and other institutions, to create more program in which they can bring youth and police together so they can sort of build bridges, bring together so they can easy the conversation, put them together, create program where they can come and counter together, so that to easy the atmosphere, because even in a relationship at home or with anyone, communication is so important. So everything starts with communicating in a civil and respectful manner. And I think that this is something that is really absent, because a lot of youth, I know that once they see police officer, they don't feel necessarily relaxed or easy. So I think that this is something that in particular, like in classroom, for example, at the discretion of the principal, is some of the police officers, especially officers from community affairs, They are invited to come to classrooms, so a student can ask them questions, whatever question they think would be appropriate, even as career-wise or anything else. But the idea is just to break the ice, to allow them to come together so they can start this conversation. So hopefully in the future, the tension will be more or less, kind of released. But conversation is important, as I am having and asking you that today. So I want to thank you so very much for your time and allow me to speak.
Thank you, and thank you for your work on Community Board 12. They're very strong partners of GYCD.
Thank you.
I don't think we have anyone else to testify, but we're gonna leave the record open, because it's up until 6 o'clock. Again, thank you on behalf of Commissioner Chung for coming to testify. We're gonna actually take a look at everything that was said, do some follow-up with the organizations, the agencies that are here, as well as, like we heard from the MTA, about issues and concerns about the MTA as well. And a lot of the things that we hear tonight will help guide the work that the ICC does next year. So again, thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.